Welcome into Floyd Street's finest. He is former Louisville assistant Mark Lieberman. I am Jack Grossman. And, Coach, we got real basketball games to talk about now. Louisville 2-0 headed into Kentucky on Tuesday night.
Something else, right? I mean, it's a great time of the year when you can just turn on the TV or just look at, and we've got 40 or 50 games going, and they count. It's not that they never do for coaches and for players. I mean, exhibitions matter, but now we're into the real thing, and the warm-ups are out of the way, and now we've got Tuesday on the horizon.
Yeah, especially since Louisville's warm-ups, even though they did count as games of South Carolina State, Jackson State, felt a little bit like warm-ups lead up to this Kentucky game. But this is Floyd Street's finest, part of the Field of 68 podcast network. Again, he is Mark Lieberman. I'm Jack Grossman. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff I should have said at the top. But part of the Field of 68 podcast network. Always enjoy being a part of that. Again, like, subscribe on YouTube, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, however you're consuming this. He's at Coach Lieberman on Twitter. I'm at Jack Grossman 97. Coach, we'll go ahead and start here because we're going to talk Kentucky. We're going to talk a lot of Kentucky tonight. But what do you think that we learned about Louisville, if anything, out of these first two games?
I think we learned a lot, and it goes back to you take all four and you just encapsulate what they're doing, their identity. And look, I will tell you this, to come out as sharp as they did in the last two games and to be crisp and to get out and go and how they're sharing the basketball, those are all good signs. What I really love is they're dictating pace and tempo defensively as well. They're extending their pressure with the depth that they have. They're picking up. Their pickup point is really high. They're defensively, they're so active. The breakdowns I'm doing, and we did that today defensively, just how the activity – Kaeson Pryor just being, on top of that press, even though it's, people think it's more of a one-two, it's more of a matchup and it's just a scramble and trapping the first pass. But regardless, he's doing a lot of good things. All the guards are. And then you talk about sprint zones and this team get out and running. I mean, look, we talked about the fact that they're going to average 30 to 43s a game, but, only making, 10 the last game, but still scoring 106 points is a great sign because they do offensive rebound so well.
Yeah, they had 50 points in the paint in that game against Jackson State as well. And I love that you brought up Kaeson Pryor because that was as when he checked into the game on Thursday night, that was okay. I'm excited to see what he looks like, not in terms of, obviously you miss a full year, you're going to have some rust and all that stuff. But I wanted to see what his role was going to be. And sure, with Louisville's front court, the way things are shaking out right now, Connie Roots obviously has had a great start to the season as well. But I think Kaeson Pryor might have to play a bigger role than expected. And I love the fact that they had him as kind of the head of the snake in that pressure. And they did this with Roots as well when he was in the game. With his length, his energy, his athleticism, I think is a perfect fit that, frankly, especially with how little we see elaborate pressing in college basketball these days. If we see any pressing at all, it's usually just a full court man to try to slow the tempo down. I think it's a great wrinkle on what teams are used to seeing defensively. And I think that's something that can be incredibly effective and play into Kaeson Pryor's strengths as a player and increase the tempo and the pace, which is what Louisville wants to do all year long.
Well, this is also you have to change the dynamics of what you're doing against it. So you saw Jackson State and you saw South Carolina State have their fours or their big men inbounds, and that's a better recovery for Kaeson Pryor to get back. Now teams have to work on their press breaker, even though dissecting exactly when those random traps are coming. They trapped the first pass, but then last night you had Kaeson Pryor. Smart trapping is what I call it, when the offense player turns his back and he can get there, and they forced a couple turnovers that way. But now, do I want to have a guard inbound? Do we want to do it on makes? It's going to be something that you have to prepare for. And when you're doing that, you're thinking more about what they're doing than what you're running. And that's why the presses that I've run, Coach Pitino's run, that it affects teams. It takes you out of what you like to do. So, just seeing him, and no matter what, Jack, you could talk about, he was ready and coaches felt he was ready, trainers feel he's ready, but nothing like going out on the court, having, dry mouth and playing in front of the fans and the officials and the clock stoppage. It's not the same as practice when you're out there and you get a feel and you could see, I've been around a lot of players who had some severe injuries, and when they come back, it's a mental thing. And to see how engaging he was, the energy is there. He's such an energy giver. And of course, all the way to the end of the game and even to a press conference, He's giving energy. So the guy's what they need, and he brings it. And I love the type of player he is, and his attitude is always fun to see.
What'd you think of the press conference quote?
I mean, I talked about it earlier in the day. I was on the drive with Mark, and I was like, look, he's probably the over under of him getting a technical is pretty high of a half. I would take the over. And I said he's going to do something, and he waited to the end of the game. And look, that's his personality. It's not, he's not feigning anything. That's how he is. I've got to, I've been around him a little bit. Don't know him well, but he's a great young man. But when it's time to play, it's time to compete. Guy gets after it, man, and you like that. It's the bravado, and you want guys who expect to win, and you want to, it's not stirring anything up. He believes in his team, he believes in himself, and that's always a positive to me.
And the quote we're talking about, for those who may not be as deep in the mud on Twitter and social media and all that stuff, was, and credit to Matt McGavick for tweeting this out after walking out the door of the press conference on Thursday night. Pryor goes, "We'll see you guys on Tuesday night after a win. Bleep them," which honestly, Coach, I think that kind of just lit the fire on both sides of the Louisville, Kentucky stuff, because it's been kind of an interesting vibe with the game being so early and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Pryor says that it just feels like everything's gone scorched earth the last 24
Of course, it's a
so
talking
since
point.
then. Yeah.
And, look, BBN's going to go bonkers with all that kind of stuff. But look, it's not defamation of UK program. It's just, hey, this is a big game. Everybody knows about it. People want to feel that because you have a bunch of guys that haven't played in it before. There's a lot of turnover in college basketball, so people don't really feel what that's like. And now, especially that game is November 11th and so early in the season, something like that. Look, as a coach, for me, great. I don't have a problem with that. And the guy's a competitor. As long as you compete, you play hard, you do your job, you say things like that. Look, it's not a knock. He expects to win, and his teammates are excited about. Now they get to, they get as much as, and that's the beauty of it, Jack, because look how we just talked about it earlier. They were sharp. They were really doing some really good things these last 4 games, especially the last 2 games. But now they can really lock in on the film, on the scout, on the prep for Kentucky. You've got 4 days to really get yourself locked in for everything that's happening. Obviously, tonight you've got Kentucky and Valpo. I watched them against Nichols. It's interesting because I've got some thoughts on, I think, how this game's going to play out too.
Well, let's go right there then. How do you think this game's going to play out?
Well, I really think that from a Kentucky standpoint, I don't think they're going to try and get up and down and play a fast tempo type of game. I think they really want to play in the half court. I think they want to pound the ball inside. I think they want to play inside out. I think they want to get to the basket. I think they want their offense to help their defense, meaning they want to get to the basket. They want to score. So Louisville is not going to get out as quick. The dynamics of Kentucky getting back in transition is going to be paramount in a game like this. And I think they want to get to the free throw line as not being a great free throw shooting team, but I think they want to get to the line because that slows down what Louisville's trying to do. And on the flip side, I think Louisville wants to play breakneck speed and just get up and down and get into the 90s and the 100s for both teams. I think that is what Louisville's trying to do. So I think it's kind of a paradox of what we've always seen with Kentucky and just going out and playing as fast as possible. I think they really want to get into the half court, and there's going to be times where get into their zooms and play high lows. What Louisville's been doing has been really trapping and hard hedging the ball screen. And if you do that with the zooms, there could be some pressure release where there's a quick pass and then a dump into the post. So it's going to be interesting to see what Louisville does guarding some of the zooms, guarding some of the ball screens. I'm really fascinated to see if they're going to do some things differently coming into this game, and probably maybe not blitzing maybe as much or hedging as much, maybe going under sometimes, maybe some drop coverage because of the shooting that Kentucky has not shown. So it's just going to be fascinating to see how they're going to guard them. And I think Kentucky is really going to try and control pace and play more of a slower style.
Yeah, I do think, though, that especially with how much we like to see, Mark Pope likes to use his bigs in front court to facilitate passing the ball and setting everything up. I think we are going to see a lot of pressure releases off those blitzes and things like that. Can Kentucky's big men do that at the level that an Amari Williams did that for UK last year, or an Ali Khalifa did that for Pope at BYU a couple years ago? I think that's yet to be determined. I know that's something Pope wants to do, but Kentucky hasn't fully proven that yet on this side. I think this is going to be a really big test for Kentucky's front court on that. At the end of the day, though, I think a lot of it comes down to, you think Louisville's going to play more drop coverage, all that stuff. I think what we've talked about earlier, extending their pressure, trapping, and really trying to speed Kentucky up in the full court, that's going to be a huge key for this one to try to increase
Mhm.
that pace, like you talked about. Louisville's really going to have to flex their strength in the backcourt with their athleticism on that end of the floor. And yes, Kentucky, Jalen Lowe's supposed to be back Friday night against Valpo. Aberdeen's back.
Right.
Jasper Johnson. Like, Kentucky's got some dudes, but I'm taking Louisville's backcourt over Kentucky's. That's Louisville's strength here. And if they can make it a backcourt up and down type of game, that's really where Pat Kelsey and the Cardinals want to live. So I think I think their defensive pressure is the single biggest thing I'm looking for on this. If they're able to pressure the ball, push UK out, and at the same time rotate a lot better than they did in the Kansas game, where Kansas really broke the game open, especially when they started blitzing Peterson as much as they did.
Right.
That's going to be the big key: is can Louisville dictate the game with their ball pressure defensively?
Oh yeah. Look, it'll be fascinating to see because look, I'm a believer of if you do something well, can stay with it. You don't have to be tricky. You don't have to be fancy. You don't have to change all your coverages. Look, if they go drop, if they switch at times, but look at Kansas. That was the first game of the year. You're not really sure what they're going to do. There were some open side ball screens where they were caught in some switches, especially in the first half, and then to start the second half where you had McNeely switch on and they would go high low. That's just going to be the chess match that you're going to see in this type of game. And again, I think Louisville extending their pressure and really getting after their guards. They have some. Conwell has established himself as a guy that I'm gonna absolutely just try and pick you up and really turn you and really just get the tempo and the pace going. And Malik Brown has shown that as well. And so do the other guys. And look, you got from Hadley, from Kobe Rogers, Woolley, these guys are going to get after you. They're going to get into you. So that's something that's going to be, and you have the depth to do it. Now in the half court, if they stay with blitzes, they just have to do it. Look, it's being connected. You have to really, when you're tagging, you have to have arm across as a guard. You got to make sure those bigs are recovering. There was a moment even against Jackson State where they were late. The communication on the pick and roll wasn't great, and they survived it because it was Jackson State. Now, in a situation where the bigs are communicating, where on a roll, the other big can come over and take it and keep the guy high to take away the ball reversal, the pressure release. So there's a little different. There's all those little games that you could play as far as defensively. But overall, if Louisville gets up and down and can just continue to attack, and they're shooting the ball well, I'm going to tell you, it's going to be a tough out for Kentucky if Louisville's getting out going and guys are making shots.
Yeah, and it does feel weird to say that Mark Pope's going to want to slow the game down, but I do agree with you. I think Louisville's strength is the speed, the backcourt, the ball
Mm-hmm.
pressure, trying to get up and down. If you're Kentucky, especially, they haven't shot the ball the way a Mark Pope team usually does so far this season. Again, very small sample size. It's dangerous
Exactly.
to play that game.
Right.
But
Mm-hmm.
on paper, I think they're a better shooting team than what they've shown, but they're still not as good of a shooting team as we're accustomed to seeing a Mark Pope team. He built his team more to be defensive stalwarts, athletes, and that type of style, which I think was smart, which kind of with how their season went last year, that was really where they struggled on that end of the floor and trying to make up for it this season. But I do think, you take some one way, you maybe give some a little bit back there. I think Louisville is the better offensive team. I do believe that. And I would also add, if you look at Kentucky's, I know the exhibitions are weird and Jalen Lowe hadn't played yet. Neither of them.
Mm-hmm.
Aberdeen didn't play in the Georgetown game either, but Purdue's a team that plays a lot of drop coverage. They don't pressure the ball a lot. And I'm not saying this disparages Purdue. I mean, I had them my preseason final four. They're very deserving preseason number one, but that's just not what Matt Painter wants to do. He's more of a pack line-ish
Mm-hmm.
type coach on the defensive end. And I thought Kentucky handled that a lot better than they did with Georgetown and the athletes they have. I want to say they were switching a decent amount on the ball screens. You can correct me if I'm wrong, coach. I'm trying to remember. But but they struggled with Georgetown's athleticism and ball pressure a little bit more in that
Right.
game. And also, Georgetown might not be that bad. I know, for
I
full
think they're
disclosure,
better. Yeah.
we're recording this like 6:30 on Friday night,
They
and
got Maryland right now. Yeah.
they were up 11 to nothing
Yeah.
right
I
before
saw
we
that.
started recording. So and that's in College Park too. So that would be, I know the Kentucky wouldn't count for the resume, but that would be two pretty damn impressive things to do for Ed Cooley's
Hmm.
program there if he's able to win that Maryland game as well. But
No, no doubt.
yeah,
And yeah, look, with Louisville, it's you're whether they're going to do it the drop or whatnot. Look, it's Kentucky's going to make a concerted effort to get downhill on their zooms, and we saw that against Kansas, right, where their guards were getting in the lane, the bigs were helping up. There was a lobs, there's those type of things. I think that drove home a point of you just have to have the mentality of not tonight, meaning you're dictating and dominating, whether it's Conwell, whether it's Hadley, whether it's McNeely, whether it's Woolley, whether it's Rogers, go on and on and on. Mikael Brown, they're saying we got to stay in front of our guys no matter what. And if we get screened, we can't stay screened. We've got to, if we have to bust it under, then we're busting it under. But we're going to make sure that we're not getting beat where they're not getting, where the bigs have to help up because they don't have a rim protector. They don't have a big that you're just going to say, okay, he's going to erase all our mistakes. They've got to do a really good job of keeping people in front. They have Prue, who's really impressed me with some of the things defensively. But again, it's still a process for him. Kaeson coming back and Khalifa again, it doesn't have the overall athleticism, in the post and Mizzou, he's getting there, but he's a bit undersized as far as that goes. So the guards, it's vital that they're going to keep the Kentucky guys in front of them, and it's not going to be an advantage where the bigs are going to be open on either short rolls or on lobs and those type of things. And if they go open side, I'd load to the ball and just force skips and fade passes and make Kentucky beat you that way.
yeah, make them beat you shooting the three, something that they haven't been able to do so far this year. Um, and that's where everything that comes back to the Kansas game. I think that tape's going to be very valuable for Louisville in this one because if Kentucky goes to those open ball screens, it's okay. You got to get the tag down. You got to rotate, do all this stuff we've been talking about. What have you seen from Frew on the defensive end that's impressed you?
I mean, it's just been, I've broken it down on film. There's so many things that are not going to show up. As simple as stunts, as simple as stunting and slowing down the ball handler. I'm big on, and I'll physically show you on swiping too. And that's something that I know Coach Kelsey shows, having them swipe at the ball handler and make them indecisive and so on. Instead of just retreating and what's called helping up or opening up to the ball, he's in a boxer stance. He's doing different things defensively, and he's recovering. In the second half of Kansas, he's recovering back, and he's been doing that. Like there's a play, and again, I don't care who you're playing. I just want to see effort and energy. Last night, I mean, just an unbelievable blitz and a sprint to recover with high hands. And if you're doing that, look, you're slowing down. Guards don't want to turn the ball over. So if they even think that there's a guy that there's a chance of not going to throw that pass, they're not going to do it. They're concerned about, hey, I don't want to turn the ball over. That's vital to and critical to all coaches as well. So as a guard, that's when you're fronting, when you're moving your feet, which is what Louisville's doing. Guards are hesitant to throw that pass. But when you get switches, when you get people caught behind, then you want to throw the ball into the post. So if Louisville and Frew, for me, I mean, as far as grades being in the stance, I looked at with all my teams, I grade you on stance, I grade you in positioning, I grade you in hand activity, deflections, alertness, off the ball, on the ball. I just think he's doing a fabulous job. So people are expecting him. Look, last night there's a clip. He gets an offensive rebound. He's actually right under the rim where he can go. But he's got four guys who are standing up right around him. He kicks it out to Mikael Brown and misses the three. But it's a great play. Look, you can go up and look. There's times, he should go up and score those. But on the offensive end, I think he's screening. He had the seal for Roos on the drive. But defensively, man, I just think Jack, he to me has become a guy who understands what Coach Kelsey wants. He's not hunting shots. He understands who he is. And a big thing in coaching, if you can find a guy who can find his role, stay in his role, and star in his role, what Frew has done defensively, I think, he as the season goes on, he's only going to get better.
Yeah, I know that's something we saw with James Scott last year too,
Sure.
where he really came on as the season went along with Louisville's front court. They're going to need Frew to really be that guy. And I know even it felt like they were almost rewarding him to start the second half of the Jackson State game with what he was doing defensively by running, a lob play for him to start the second
Mm-hmm.
half. He had a really good dive on a pick and roll. Brown made a fantastic pass to find him for a dunk. He had the offensive rebound you were talking about to where he was getting a little bit more active on that end of the floor as well. But again, with all Louisville's firepower, I'm with you, man. He's got to be that guy, that kind of anchor on the defensive end. He's got to, pressure the ball, blitz out and recover, do all these types of things to where he's showing the signs now of he's growing the more and more that we see him to where he's gonna have a tall task with Garrettson and Mo Diabate
Yep.
and all these guys. Kentucky's got a really good front court. Not your traditional back to the basket post up type guys, but they're gonna test him a lot in zooms and all this stuff we've been talking about. And he's going to have to be good on the glass as well because Louisville can't get manhandled on the rebounding edge too, to where he and Pryor and Roos and are really going to be a big key in this one. Can they mitigate Kentucky's perceived advantage in the front court?
There was a play against Kansas. It was the opening play of the second half when they got the switch with McNeely. And, Hadley was late recovering back with ball pressure, and that was his scramble and his X out. And you know what? The best post defender is not a 7-footer, it's ball pressure. And with the activity and length that the Louisville guards and wings have, I mean, if they just get after it, and again, that's that mentality where, you've got to, bother the ball, trace the basketball, not make them concerned about you. And also, hey, and protect the drive. And this team has been really good at shrinking gaps off the ball. You see these guys engaged. So the ball pressure is key. And if you could do that, even if it's guards, coming up on the bigs, that's okay. Just as long as the activity is just absolutely just maniacal defensively with that in the half court. I think that's going to be Louisville's advantage. The size won't matter as much if you're really pressuring the ball and you're really making it hard and pushing them out. And even if those pressure releases are another 2 or 3 inches away from the 3-point line, that makes a huge difference with an entry pass.
Right, that's something we saw time after time last year. I mean, you think about the games of the Bahamas a year ago with Chucky Hepburn, Terrence Edwards, and Hadley. Those three guys spearheading that front.
Mm-hmm.
When Louisville was at their best a year ago, it's the same system, different players, but more athleticism and even more size than what they had a year ago. That's really how you try to get over the hump of not having the size that someone like Kentucky does have to try to get around that. How
Yeah.
do you think Jalen Lowe returning? I know again we're recording this Friday night, so we haven't seen Lowe in a Kentucky uniform yet.
Right.
How do you think he changes things for Kentucky?
Well, obviously he brings. Look, he's a heck of a guard. He can score. He can make plays. And people talk about. Look, he's not that hard to guard. Look, I think that kid is pretty good. Understands the game. I think he's another weapon for what they have, and having him healthy. And again, that's another X factor for him. So him coming into this game and being healthy, being effective, I mean, he's going to help with some of the pressure that Louisville is going to extend. So having a guy like that can handle a basketball, make good decisions, that's something that they're going to rely on. Look, I think that if he's good to go, that's just another great little storyline for this game. And Louisville's expecting him to play, and that they're not going to live in their fears. They're going to say, "Look, we're not changing what we're doing." I expect them. They did it against Kansas. They're going to extend their pressure. They're going to make you work. And again, it might not always be the biggest thing, and especially in his situation, it's not always going to force him into turnovers, but you're going to wear guys down. And the guy that's coming back and just, especially at the guard position with Kaeson Pryor, look, you can, as you said, mitigate some of the minutes and figure out, hey, how we can get him in. In the guard situation, look, you're getting picked up and you have to, 70 feet from the basket, you're being guarded hard and turned. Yeah, it's a difference. And so I think their point is, hey, we're not going to let him rest. We want to really get after him. As soon as he gets a touch, we're picking him up. And I think that's a challenge. This group seems to enjoy that challenge and embraces getting after defensively.
Yeah, and the thing I'd add on that too, I mean, I really like Denzel Aberdeen. He's a really good player. Not a pure point guard.
Right.
Jasper Johnson, he loves to chuck the ball every time he touches it. That's kind of what I feel. I get the vibes I get from him, which can be, he's a freshman. He's a young guy. He'll mature and get better. But he's kind of that boomer bust dude that maybe he scores 28, maybe he shoots 1 of 9 from the field. We don't really know what we're gonna get from him. Jalen Lowe's the dude. He's the guy that's gonna stir the drink. He's gonna play that Lamont Butler role that we saw from Kentucky last year. He's the only guy on the roster that is really from the guard spot that's going to set the table, facilitate, and run the show the way that Mark Pope's going to want the show to run. So if you're Louisville, I absolutely agreed. It's can you try to wear him down throughout the game? He's coming off this injury. He might, yes, it was a shoulder injury. You can still do cardio and all that stuff. Game cardio is a little different than running stadium stairs or on the treadmill.
Especially when you're walking into the in
Yeah.
front of in that atmosphere. And we talked about it, like for Kaeson to get all the butterflies out. With low situation, look, that's the difference with a guard. Like you could run at him. You could take the ball out of his hands once he passes it, deny him, make him really work. One thing they were doing against Jackson State in the last couple games, they weren't letting guys out of pin downs, of staggers, of actions, of handoffs, which is they're trying to blow those plays up. So if they're doing that, and again, you talked about like Williams last year for Kentucky. They don't have the bigs that can just absolutely just dribble and try and make plays as well as they did from last year. So like this is a situation where I think they're going to try and blow up those handoffs, blow up the zooms, and really, do those type of things where the bigs can not have to step out as much because the wings and the guards for Louisville are so big and strong. I think that's a factor that you have. I mean, even McNeely, man, he's a tough kid. Like, Rain Smith, love him to death, but like McNeely is a different cat because he's just bigger, stronger, and more athletic.
Again, I know we've said this before, but you don't play for Tony Bennett and not learn how to play defense.
Yes.
That's not how that works.
It's amazing watching him on film because he's always, whether he's, the further away his man is from the ball, Jack, the term I use, the further away he is, from his man. So he's always in the right position. He's always off the ball. He's engaged. He's in a stance. He can see the next play. He's not guarding guys on the catch. He's seeing that and he's blowing plays up. So yeah, it's having a guy like him defensively. Yeah, it's great because he's almost like a signal caller, like a free safety, calling things out for guys too. And you watch him on film; he's pointing, he's talking, he's alerting some of the young guys, so where to be, especially Mikael Brown. It's great for Mikael to have a guy like that on the floor with him.
Where do you see Connie Roots, his role in this game? Assuming Javon Hadley does play, Roots has had a really good start to the season. What does he need to do to take it against? Because again, playing Kentucky's a lot different than playing
Yeah,
Jackson State or South
and
Carolina
that's the
State.
thing, right? That's the thing, and I'm impressed with him. That's the thing we just don't know. He's not a great shooter. He's a guy that can get to the rim. And it's just one of those things where I think the biggest thing for him is to come in and like he's done, just rebound and defend, and don't be consumed with the other stuff. Just rebound, defend, be the guy that's activity is unmatched by anybody else on the floor, and the points will come. And it's almost like Horace Grant playing with the Bulls when they had Scottie Pippen and Jordan. Like you just run the floor, get a putback, rebound, and all of a sudden you have a double-double just that way. And if he does those type of things and becomes the best defender, which he can be, like that's a guy that can switch out on guards. He can guard the post. He could use his footwork and his athleticism to do those type of things. He can change shots. So if he does those things, it'll be interesting to see what his role is going to be against Kansas. What was it, 10 minutes?
Yeah.
But I think his confidence is a huge thing in this game, in the game of basketball, in the game of life. And so like for him, it's only grown over the last 3 games. So look, it's depending on where he fits in. I'd love to see him be a factor for this team. And again, like you said, it's a sample size. It's only their 3rd game, and no matter what happens in this, I'd love for him to be impactful. But I think as the season goes on, he could be that guy that's an X factor for him.
Right. That's one of the things that's weird about this game with how early it is, because, I'm used to, even though we've been breaking this game down from pretty much every angle we can think of for over a half hour now. When you get to this game, it's a lot of, okay, we know what both teams are going to do and what they do well.
Mm-hmm.
Let's break it down X and O's wise. There's a lot of hypotheticals in this one, just because yes, each team's had a couple exhibitions, but this is only the 3rd game of the season for both teams. We haven't seen Louisville at full strength, because even when Pryor comes back, Hadley misses a game. We haven't seen Kentucky at full strength yet, and we won't see them at full strength on Tuesday, because Jaden Clayton's the dude who is probably most apt to be that kind of big man facilitator that Mark Pope once said
no doubt.
is not going to be playing in the game. There's a lot of just so many more unknowns to what we're used to with this game. And it gives a very different vibe to kind of break it down and preview it than what I feel like we normally get.
Yeah, I'll tell you this: watch for little things, and I call it. You've heard me call it before, but I call it special teams, just the out of bounds defense, out of bounds offense, side out of bounds, UOBs, special situations, ATOs. Louisville has been fantastic with some of the stuff they've been running, and I think if they can just manufacture 8 points, 6 points, out of that, and get a few stops. They've been really engaged on that part. So I think that could come down to something that could change it from a 4 or 5 point lead to a 7 or 8 point lead. So those type of things are important, especially this early in the season. I think they've been really crisp in watching that. They have counters for all those, for how you want to guard it. And look, if you're not alert and ready, Louisville's prepared, and they, Kelsey is really good at the UOBs, and so I think that's a little part of it as well. And rebounding for sure. This team, you look at the game. Look, last night I believe they had, I might be 32 offensive rebounds. They had, obviously with the misses against Kansas, they had 20. They had 21. They're averaging 20.7 offensive rebounds a game, and it's because when they practice, Jack, they're expecting those threes. They're expecting to get opposite inside. They're expecting long rebounds, so they're going after it. They're pursuing outside of their areas. If they can get second shots and third shots, I think that's going to be huge. You get Kentucky maybe in foul trouble. You get some easy baskets. You get second and third opportunities. I think rebounding in a game like this in special situations are going to be huge.
It's very early in the season, obviously, but Louisville right now is grabbing 38.6% of their misses.
That's absurd.
That is that is also not sustainable. So no one expects it to be that high of a percentage all year. But
I don't. But I think that's still going to be. They're going to be one of the top teams in the country, because if you watch them, that's something that's not just okay. We're hoping that they're taught again where those shots are coming from. Their spacing is incredible, but they know where those guys are. And in transition, they're expecting every other player besides the shooter thinks it's a pass to them off the backboard of the rim. And you see them. They're sending 4 or 5 guys to the rim. And even against Bucknell, they had a couple leakouts. As coaches, you can live with that sometimes. They're not systematically sending 2 guys back, or sending, making sure a 4 and a 3 are back or whatnot. They're sending guys to the boards because they're more athletic than a lot of teams. So, as athletic as any team they face. And so those rebounds, people say 50-50 ball as a coach. When you have more athleticism, it's a 70-30 ball or an 80-20 ball. That should be ours. So they're expecting now. It's not going to be at a 38 or 39% clip as the season goes on.
Right, that's just impossible to maintain. You can be a really good offensive rebounding team, but not come close to that.
Right. But I still think this team is part of their offensive DNA right now is offensive rebounding, and I think that's a huge part. So between the special situations, between the rebounding and getting second shots, I think this is where that team, Louisville especially, could really assert themselves, especially as this game goes on.
Yeah, I'd say the other thing I'd add is a small thing, but I think Louisville's shown to be really apt at this so far, just because Kentucky has to be so conscious of Louisville's 3-point shooting. And Louisville has, whether it be Eddie the guards or Ali Khalifa as well, they've been so good at taking advantage of how concerned opposing teams are with 3-point shooting. You think back again to the Kansas game, Khalifa comes in and I think there's 2-3 different back cuts to different guys to get buckets. I think that's something, how Louisville moves without the ball is something that can be really beneficial and really helpful, because Kentucky has to keep in mind how good and how dangerous Louisville is behind the arc. And also guys like Brown and Conwell too, beating their man off the dribble to get driving lanes, to get Kentucky into scramble and help modes is something that's going to be really interesting to watch also, because Kentucky, again, very athletic. How can Louisville get by their guards? How does Kentucky rotate? And can Louisville get them caught late on some of those rotations?
That's a great point. And look, you have to respect when you've got McNeely in the corner or Conwell in the corner or any of the guards, and Mikael Brown's coming down the floor, right? You can't help off some guys. So, and look, with Khalifa, he's been a guy that no matter what, in the trail position, they're hitting him because he's making a great decision. He could take a false dribble towards an action, reverse dribble, spin the other way like last night, takes a false dribble towards Conwell, reverse dribbles, and then you see Kaeson Pryor with a back cut, and the defender's back is turned, and there it is over the top for a dunk. But what are you going to give up? Do you want to stay attached and not give that up, or go underneath a handoff to McNeely, to Conwell, to Brown, to Woolley, and have those guys be able to knock down a shot, or rescreen after that action and, right into a ball screen? So it's whatever they're running. And look, they're not running a bunch of plays, and that's not what Coach Kelsey wants. It's creativity. It's understanding, having high basketball IQs, and reading a defense. What's the play? The defense is telling you to play. And this team is really adapted at understanding what teams are trying to take away. So you're spot on, Jack. I think if they are, look, they're going to try and still do the same thing, get some great early shots out of transition. But when they get in the half court, then you're going to have to guard, because this team has guys that can get downhill. Mikael Brown's only getting better and better now and adjusting to a big boys game of college basketball and understanding how to navigate those ball screens. And Conwell physically, he gets where he wants. And same thing with a lot of those guards, man. So, and again, you almost have to play 4-on-4 because if McNeely's in the corner and he's not moving, you can't leave him.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think unless it's someone like Pryor or Roos or if Frew is in the game, I think he needs to be in the dunker spot.
Mm-hmm.
But I think if any of those other dudes, Hadley, McNeely, Conwell, Woolley, Brown, you choose it. I think Kentucky, with the way Mark Pope built his roster, has to roll the dice and say, look, we're a lot more athletic than we were last year. We want to be a much better defensive team. This is our challenge to keep these guys from getting to the bucket because you cannot let Louisville beat you with open 3-point shooting. They are too good and too dangerous from beyond the arc. But that's, again, the flip side of that. You got to say in front of Michael Brown and Ryan Conwell. That's a very difficult thing to do as well. That's a pick your, as you said, the pick your poison type thing that Kentucky and every team is going to have to deal with all year because that's where Louisville's at. They've assembled a hell of a backcourt, a hell of a roster on that front.
It's fascinating because you watch Louisville in transition or just even getting to their 5-out into their spacing and early offense. They're not sending guys rim running. They're spaced out. So what I love about that is, even if it's Pryor or it's Frew or whatnot, they're not starting by just getting down to the dunker spot or to the rim where a big can just hang out there in the paint and decide to block a shot or help up. They're extended. And that means, if nothing else, here comes a ball screen. And if you're late and lazy defensively, there's an open three. So they're extending that. Now, it might be some hard rolls to the basket and getting guys to dunker spots. But what's fascinating about what Coach Kelsey's done early is keeping those guys wide and moving, where a big can't just sit in the paint and decide, okay, I'm just going to sit here and just basically clean up whatever the mess is, where you have those bigs being able to set ball screens, and now you have a guard coming downhill, and then it's either a pocket pass or a layup or a mid-range shot or whatever it is, a floater, and you have those options. So, that's the way they're with the way the pace of play. I mean, it's fun to watch for all young coaches and whatnot to watch how they get into their stuff is really unique.
How much pressure is on Louisville to win this game?
I mean, when is it not? No matter what, right? I mean,
right, but especially this year,
yeah.
Because we've done the thing where, especially the last handful of years, last year Louisville competed really well. They were in the game, but at the end of the day, Louisville was incredibly shorthanded. Kentucky was a really good team. It's in Rupp Arena, whatever. Then right. The Kenny Payne years. That's its own thing.
Move on.
Move on.
Look, when I was coaching there, they were better, right? When I was there, my 2 years at Louisville as an assistant, Kentucky was better, and we competed, but they were a better team, and they beat us 3 times when I was there. So it's just one time in the Final Four, obviously. But we competed, we battled, but no matter what we did, we had to be perfect, right? And where this team doesn't have to be that way. So when you talk about pressure, I think, from a coaching standpoint and from a player standpoint, you can use that, you spin it and it's to your advantage. Yeah, there is pressure, but pressure makes you, hey, that means we're going to be so focused in film. We're going to understand that what a player likes to do. We're going to take this away. We know if Lowe likes to spin off of a ball screen, we know we're going to take that away because we're just going to watch copious amounts of film. We're going to be absolutely as sharp as we can be in practice and so on. I mean, pressure is always going to be a part of it. And no matter what, look, isn't it great though? Like being, and again, you were here and just being on the radio. I mean, people are expecting them to win, and that's a good thing. So the pressure, it's there. There's no doubt that there's pressure for this team to win this game. But where this program was at, this is great, and they probably are the better team right now. If you just look at it right now, and I don't know what the spread is or if it's came out.
Ken Pom has Louisville by 1 right now.
Yeah, I was going to say it's going to be a pick'em. It's going to be a coin toss. But look, it's going to be one of those situations where, you know what? Louisville's at home. They probably should get this one.
Right. I think when you look at the rivalry and Louisville trying to, people talk about Kentucky really having the upper hand in the rivalry and all that stuff. I think the big thing everyone likes to throw out, Kentucky hasn't won, or Louisville hasn't won at Rupp Arena over UK since 2008, which I was in 4th grade when that happened. So it's been a minute. But I think, honestly, just as important, if not more important than that, Louisville has to they have to defend their home court. in the rivalry, and that's something that they've done at times. I mean, the title team won in 2013. They won the Carly Jones year. The Quinn Snyder Donovan Mitchell team was able to win, but Louisville's barely going 500 at home in this series in the last 15, 16 years, basically since John Calipari got the job at Kentucky. If Louisville wants to make this more of a back and forth with Kentucky, yes, you do eventually have to go win in Rupp Arena. But if you start consistently winning your games at home in this series, that's how you make this more even footing, beyond just the fact that we're going into this game and we think Louisville is probably the better basketball team right now. I agree with you on that, and should be the favorite, even if it's a slim favorite, should be the favorite to win the game.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing, right? It's look, going into and playing in that place, and that place is just, it can't wait to like the energy in that building. It's just going to be incredible. So, but to your point, you're not wrong. I mean, look, it's a game that Louisville, to make it a rivalry, right? To start winning those games, and hey, take care of this one. Last year with the injuries and whatnot, look, they battled, but yeah, going into this one, they're healthy, they're playing well. This is not a game where you're saying, well, they're going to have to be perfect at this. No, they don't have to be perfect. They just got, they've got to do the little things. They've got to do what we talked about. But regardless, yeah, they probably should win this game. And I think people are expecting that. So, yeah, the pressure is palpable. People could feel it. And I'm sure the coaches feel that and the players feel that. And that's, look, but hey, that's the beauty of it. And there's nothing worse than game day as a coach. It's just misery and just absolute nerves until tip off. So, and that's how it's going to be. And you have trust that you guys are ready to go. And listen, it's fun that we get to talk about what we're talking about. You get to ask me about pressure and all that kind of stuff, and
Yeah.
how they're going to feel, because this is a coin toss right now, literally.
As someone who's been on the coaching staff for this rivalry, what's just something that stands out or that you remember, or just that really makes it different than your normal Tuesday night top 10 matchup?
I mean, it's just like when I was a part of it, anybody you ran into at the grocery store, anybody you ran into anywhere at the gas station, hey coach, we're gonna win this one, right? And it's just like, yeah, no other game did you ever get that, and it didn't matter. The Big East games and Big East championship, no, it was that one. It was always like, and I grew up in Miami, Florida, so I got to see a Miami FSU rivalry. I got to see all those type of things, watching on TV. Get see Duke and Carolina, but living this and being a part of this, and seeing what this is like, and wherever Louisville's playing across the country, there's someone in a blue shirt tweeting something out. So it's crazy. It's absolutely bonkers up here with all this. But man, that's the beauty of it. I love like those type of games, man. I love like the feeling, the build up for this. The next 4 days is going to be incredible.
I think my favorite thing from along the lines of just seeing a blue shirt anywhere you are. I remember this was the David Paget year where they went to Rub. They kind of got their butts kicked.
Mm-hmm.
But I was in Tel Aviv, Israel, the day of the game, and I'm walking around Tel Aviv, and I go by a bar, and I see there's a group of like 5, 6 Kentucky fans in a bar in Tel
No, is that
Aviv.
true?
Yes.
Oh, that's a beauty,
I
Jack.
was like, man, you don't escape it.
You can't. They knew you were there too.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
Yeah.
So, you talk to them, oh yeah, I'm from Louisville. They were from, I think Elizabethtown or something. I was like, why the hell are you in Israel? But
Right.
whatever. Like
Hey,
it's great. There's nothing like it. But
no, there's not.
well, it's going to be an absolute blast to see Louisville, Kentucky on the hardwood in the KFC Yum Center for the first time, the Pat Kelsey, Mark Pope eras. Coach, going to be an absolute blast, man. Going to be a hell of a game on Tuesday nights. Always, always appreciate your time, and can't wait to come back and break down whatever happens on Tuesday night in the Yum Center.
Same here, Jack. This was great. This is a great preview for the game, and going to be fun to talk about all the things that happened on Tuesday.
Yep, we'll be back then. I'm Floyd Street's Finest, part of the Field 68 Podcast Network. For Coach Lieberman, I'm Jack Grossman. Also, catch the Coach's Corner on this also. I know you said you got the new one out for the
We
Jackson
did
State
it for
game.
Jackson State. That'll be up and running on Sunday. And then yeah, we'll certainly have a deep dive on Kentucky, on the Kentucky game as well.
Hell yeah, love it. Absolutely love it. Until next